Good morning and welcome to another day with 10 Tips Over Tea. My name's Glenn Pringle from Using Technology Better. Today we're going to be talking about managing applications and settings inside G Suite's admin console. And what we can do with this is we can make use of what's called organisational units to enable apps for different groups of users or disable it, to change settings and apply that to those different groups of users. So let's have a look at organisational units. So here you can see a particular example of what organisational structure might look like for a school. At the top level we've got the root, that's the blue rectangle there, and underneath it we've got some organisational units for users and devices. So we're just dividing things up into different types of settings that we might be using. So those that we apply to users we can set for that user's organisational unit, and those for devices we can do separately. And under users you can see that there's staff and students, so we can apply different settings for staff compared to students if we want to. And down at the students level we can actually divide it up further, and we can have different organisational units for each of the different year levels if we choose. Now when it comes to working with organisational units, there's a couple of important principles to use when you're designing the structure. And the first is that less is more. You don't want to create a huge number of different organisational units, or you're just going to create a headache for yourself as you have to go in and change settings for each of those different organisational units. It's much better if you can try and minimise those number of organisational units, so you only have to change it in one or two places. And to help us achieve that, we can make use of the other important thing, and that is that organisational units inherit their settings from their parent organisational unit. So you can make a setting. So for example, if I change a setting at the students level, then it not only applies to anybody who's inside that particular organisational unit, but all those ones underneath it as well. Now if I want to, I can override that by going and changing the setting for a particular organisational unit underneath it, but I don't have to do that if I don't want to, and it'll just inherit it. So how can we make use of this in management of apps inside G Suite? Let's flick across to the admin console and go through and have a look at this. So here we are inside the admin console. And you can see here that we can actually manage organisational units from under this app. So we click on that, and you can see a list of the different organisational units. We can expand the different ones and to see the ones that are underneath it, or the sub-OUs. And from here you can create new ones, you can move them around, delete them, whatever you need to do. So let's go back and have a look at an example where we're going to go into Apps, select G Suite Core Services, and if we look here we can see that we've got a number of different apps. Most of them are enabled, they've been turned on for everyone. You can see there the writing there describing that. Hangouts Chat has just been turned on for some users, but it's off for others. And Hangouts Meet is turned off for all users. Now if we want to just enable an app, all we have to do is hover over it. You can see those three vertical dots across on the right there. Click on that, and I've got a button here where I can turn that on for everyone. So here it tells me that this will turn it on, and it can take up to 24 hours to propagate to all users. Now the way this works is that if you're in a smaller domain, it'll probably propagate through to all your users and they'll see this application just about instantly. If you're in a much larger G Suite domain, I'm talking about maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of users or even more, that's when you can see big delays in those settings taking effect, and it can take up to that 24 hours. But let's just turn this on now. Just confirm that. Okay, and we scroll back down again, you can see now that it's letting us know that this has been turned on for everyone. Now it might be that we don't want that available to all of the users. In particular, we may not want students to use Hangouts Meet. So how do we go about changing the setting just for our students. So let's click on this, and it'll open up specific settings for Hangouts Meet. And at the top here you can see that there's a server status. So if we select the server status, you can see here that it's telling us that it's on for everyone. But over on the left of the screen you'll see that there's the organisational units listed. And if we expand that and go down and have a look at our students one, we can choose that students organisational unit, and we can turn that off for that specific organisational unit. So now select override, and that's basically overriding the settings that it's inherited from the top level. And now that has been disabled for all our students. So it's users who are in this particular organisational unit and all the ones over it. Now if we go back to the left here, you might have noticed that when I overrode that I got this little grey circle next to this. And what this is doing is telling us that there's a different setting that's been applied for these particular OUs that have this grey circle. Now obviously we've set it at the top level, so you've got one there. As we scroll down, you can see that there's one here as well. So if you want to know which organisational units have got a different setting, you can just have a look here and you can quickly and easily see that. So what about if we wanted to make it available, say, for our final year students, our year 12 students? We can come into this, and you'll notice that it's currently turned off because it's been turned off at the student OU. But we can choose to turn it back on and then override that, select turn on, and now that will be made available for those year 12 students. Once again, we've got that grey circle next to that OU. Now you notice that once I've gone and made a change here for this organisational unit where it overrides the parent ones, when I come back in and have a look, we've got this inherit button. Now I could just go back and turn it off if I wanted, but if I just turned it off and I changed the setting from the parent organisational unit, it would stay turned off here because I was still overriding that setting. And so this inherit button just allows us to go back to the state it was in before, where it took its settings from the parent, so it's inheriting those settings. So we can go in and make that change. So this is how we can manage settings, this is how we can turn off and on apps for different organisational units, but let's also have a look at how we can manage individual settings at the organisational unit level. So if we come back in here, we can see that there's a number of other settings, and let's go and have a look at some of the chat settings for this. And you'll see here that under external chat settings, we've got a number of different ones, including chat externally and show status. And these are some settings we might want to change for our students. So in particular, we may not want anybody outside our organisation to be able to see the status of students. And so if we just click on this edit button here, it looks like a bit of a pen there. We can come down and we can turn that off. Save that, and that's turned off at the top level. Turn it back on, save. So that's just how we change a setting, but to do it for an individual organisational unit, same as what we did when we were doing it for the app, we can just select the organisational unit, click off, we'll override that. And now that has been turned off for that OU and all the ones underneath it. And just as we saw before, you can see this grey circle here showing us that the settings have been changed. And we've also got the inherit button where we can go back to that old state if we want to. So let's go into have a look at chat externally. Now you might want to turn this off for your students' organisational unit as well. So let's turn that off, override. But if we want to allow that for, say, our Year 12 students, same thing as we did at the app level, you can see that settings can be overridden and changed at different levels. We can turn it back on, override, And now that's available for the Year 12 students. So now you can see with this setting selected, you can see which ones have got different values set for, or which organisations have got different settings made for that. So now if we go back to the list of all the apps, you'll see that Hangouts Meet is on for some. And if we want to view those settings, we can just click on the View Details button and it'll tell us which apps have it turned on and which apps have it turned off. And so that gives us a good summary of what's going on. So I hope you've learnt something from this. You can apply these principles as you work through the admin console to just about everywhere and everything you're doing, whether it's enabling apps, changing settings, whatever it happens to be. You can make use of organisational units so that you can apply the settings exactly the way you want for each of your different groups of users. Well, I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow.